Hi guys, welcome back to another video, or your first video here, I don't know. Welcome if you're new here, welcome either way. Please ignore whatever my hair is doing. I really need to shave this side, and I don't know why, but when it's this length, it just grows straight up and it's driving me nuts. I've probably now made all of you, like, made it be bothering because now I've pointed it out, but like, I don't know, don't put it in the comments, it's really bugging me. But anyway, today I'm going to go through my October wrap up. I have been delaying in filming this for a little while. We're now almost all the way through November, and that's basically because in terms of number of books that I was getting through, I had an incredibly successful reading month, and I continue to do so into November. I have found that with me being a little bit lower mentally, normally that leads to a reading slump and I get through nothing, but I've really appreciated having audiobooks on in the background while I'm doing other things, and that's worked for me. I'm not saying it will work for everyone, but it has led to a lot of reads, and I mean, a lot of reads that I haven't liked, but also quite a few new favourites. So, oh, I haven't even counted all of them. Should I count them at the end? Yeah. So with my wrap-ups, I always go through from the books I like the least to the books I like the most, and on with the DNFs, or did not finished books. So, first of all, I have the Monogram Murders by Sophie Hannah, using the characters from Agatha Christie. So, Agatha Christie's, I was about to say empire, that's not quite what I mean. Agatha Christie's family or business, or however that works, are really strict with who can use her characters even after Agatha Christie's death. And so Sophie Hannah has been one of the few people who've been sort of permitted to use the characters of Poirot, etc., to write new mysteries under the Agatha Christie name. And so my dad read this and gave it to me, and he liked it, but I started this and I really didn't like the way that Sophie Hannah had interpreted the character of Poirot. I think that absolutely her prerogative, she can read into the character anything that she wants, she can take inspiration from anything she wants, good on her. But for me, I feel like this started with not even Murder on the Orient Express. I feel like modern adaptations of Agatha Christie's work have really tried to make them into more thrillers instead of being more cozy, find out the truth mysteries. And so quite a lot of them I haven't enjoyed. I really hated the ABC murders. And with the new Murder on the Orient Express, it was really, like, I did enjoy some changes to the novel, but they made the character of Poirot really anal and really focused in on those characteristics, and I feel like that has been reflected in here as well. The character kept on making these references, and just because that's not how I see the character when I read an Agatha Christie Poirot novel, it was really jarring and I didn't enjoy it, so I'm passing on this. Next, I have something that may not be a permanent DNF, but it's a DNF for now, and that is The Latest Guide to Celestial Mechanics. I didn't write down who that was by, so you'll be seeing that on the screen. But basically, this is mainly a expectation thing. I went into this, and I shouldn't have done this because the cover was, I think, very, very clear as to what genre it fell into. But I was in the mood for historical fantasy, and this is what I thought that was, and I didn't realise it was just queer historical romance rather than historical fantasy. And as I was going through it, I was like, oh, well, I'm disappointed by the fact that there's no fantasy elements, and I'll just continue it. But because I'd been tainted by that expectation, I was finding it hard to enjoy what it was. So for now, it's a DNF. If you typically like historical romances and you'd like something a bit more diverse about women loving women, and also women in STEM, both of the lead characters in this are incredibly intelligent and are trying to make it in a world of men in sciences. and I would highly still recommend that you check this out. This just wasn't for me at this time. And my final DNF of the month was The Summer of Jordi Perez and The Best Burger in Los Angeles. Now, this one, again, is one I still do recommend, especially for the audience it's targeted to. So this is targeted at young adults, and it's one of these ones that I don't think has as much crossover potential into other age ranges in terms of enjoyment. I feel like I would have really enjoyed this had I read it as I was younger, especially given the fact that there was queer fat rep in it, and I thought that was done incredibly well. This follows... Have I been explaining what any of these have been about? Monogram murders, I didn't really read enough into it to like fully understand what the mystery was about, so I don't want to just spout things in case it would spoil anything. And Lady's Guide to Celestial Mechanics was a young woman who has been working under her father's, not really protection, tutelage, but she surpassed her father in a lot of ways, and her father has been using her mathematical skills to further his own career. And so when she is trying to make it on her own terms, she's not being listened to, and so she goes to this wealthy woman's house in order to be given the job of a lifetime in transcribing this text. And so yeah, that's how that one goes. But yeah, The Summer of Jordi Perez is about a teenager who has applied for an internship at a fashion brand that she is really into, and she knows that having this internship, a lot of people then go on to have further job opportunities after the internship is finished, and she's really banking on that. But as she arrives, she finds that she's not been the only one who's been hired. The owner of the shop has hired 2 people to have kind of the same position, but that it's very unlikely that both of them will be able to have job opportunities at the end of the internship because of supply and demand, etc. And so she immediately has this rivalry with the other girl who was hired, but at the same time she's starting to develop feelings for this other girl, and so there's that sort of conflict. I was enjoying it well enough, but my main issue was the fact that that Jordi, the main POV, she was just so away with the fairies so much of the time that it really didn't feel as believable. I know that people, of course, get internships and are away with the fairies, but given how much she was banking on what this internship could give her, the stakes didn't feel real enough, given the fact that she was always just thinking over what other people were saying to her and the instructions given. I think that for me it would have been more realistic if she'd put in a lot of mental energy to really be present and there at first, and maybe that slips over time as she's getting more comfortable in her role and like learns more about it. But it just didn't, the stakes didn't feel as real, because I was like, you care a lot about this and you want to come out on top, but also you're making a bad impression by just being But anyway, this wasn't for me, but I do recognise that I think this could do a lot of good. So now we have some 1-star books, which are still books I enjoyed technically. I'll just get into them. So over the past couple of months, I have finally caught up and finished the Belinda Blinked series, which is the series of smutty novels that are being read by the My Dad Wrote a Porno podcast, which I was very sad to hear is ending. I recently listened to the finale episode of season 7, and my god, was that weird. But anyway, because of the way that the series ended, I was like, wait, what is going on? So I basically just started the podcast series from the very beginning in order to really understand what the hell went on in book 6. Obviously, I can't tell you what went on in book 6 because that would be spoilers. But basically, the first book is about Belinda, who goes to a job interview in the pots and pans industry, and it's kind of a sleeps her way to the top kind of situation. But yeah, it's just a lot of sex, but also a lot of weird business, and just, it's a very weird combination, very, very badly written, hence why it's in the 1-star category, but I did enjoy it. So in October, I only got through volume 1 and the extra bits, so that includes the Christmas specials, etc., that have been collated into another book, but both of those got 1 star. They're bad, but fun. It's also very queer, so I do enjoy that. So next on to some 3 stars. So first of all, I have a comic that I read called Katakoi Lamp. I don't know if I've written that down correctly because my handwriting is atrocious, but this one, yeah, it didn't particularly work for me. It was quite forgettable. I had to reread the synopsis as I was writing down all of the books that I've read over October in order to do this video, and I'd already forgotten a lot of it. And basically, there were just too many things that rubbed me the wrong way about the character's actions. I feel like there were certain things that he did that were quite manipulative. It was very clear that he had this crush on somebody and then was trying to spend more time with him by trying to get him together with someone else. And that whole situation just felt really ugh to me. I liked the art style, I liked how it wrapped up, and it was an easy, fine read, but yeah, there were certain things that the character did that were just no. The next 3-star that I have is probably the shortest read I've had so far this year, and that was a short story called Orgy by... God, I can't remember now, but this one was basically recommended to me because of the fact that it was queer, and unfortunately this felt a lot like a cash grab in a way. I think that this author was told to come up with a short story, and I feel like she touched on things. She started to have conversations about queerness and blackness and queer spaces and relationships, but the story kind of meandered around and then ended. It didn't feel like this author is used to writing short stories or knows how to structure one. Like when I go into a short story, I fully know that it's not going to last very long. I fully recognise that I'm maybe not going to get as attached to characters, or there's going to be this huge world building exercise. I realise that, but I think what people who are incredibly skilled at writing short stories can achieve is, 1, making the reader feel something, and 2, exploring a concept really well. And I really just feel like Orgy failed on both of those accounts for me. It was just kind of a fine read, and I don't see myself ever returning to it, so yeah. Oh, so that is my end of my 3 stars, but I do have quite a lot of 3.5 stars. I feel like when I was having audiobooks on, I tended to go for things that were relatively light on the brain. So there were quite a few books that I got through and I thought were good, fine, but nothing to write home about, and I'm not really going to think about ever again probably after this month, but they were fine. So first of all, we have Boyfriends for Now. I think this is an Imogen Markwell-Tweed short story. I tend to prefer her fantasy stuff over her just contemporary romance things. She writes a lot of short, very queer friendly fiction, and sort of her branding is the fact that she gives her characters happy endings. She wants her reading to be a very queer safe space, and I think that's great. Boyfriends for Now was very fun. It's about an employee who is just having a very, very bad day at work. He manages to spill coffee all over the office and all over the CEO twice. And so he gets called into the CEO's office and he thinks, well, okay, I'm going to be fired for this. There's no way that he's going to let me walk out of this anyway. And the CEO has just been having a phone call and suddenly needs someone deposes his boyfriend when he goes to visit his family for the holidays. So he's like, I won't fire you if you pretend to be my boyfriend. And it's this story of how they are pretend boyfriends and then slowly start to sort of feel things for each other, and the book goes from there. So this was really fun and really sweet. I really liked their interactions. It was really interesting how different the characters were and how much they learned things from each other moving forward. There was one part where I feel like it was setting up for something and that didn't end up occurring. Again, I can't remember either of the characters' names now. I've read so many things since. But with the CEO, his parents very much think that any relationship that their children are having must be because of gold diggers. And they don't feel like they can stand up to their parents. And I really thought that was leading to something with the relationship, with the fake relationship. So yeah, that didn't really pan out in the way that I was expecting it to. I felt that was not a plot hole, but a missed opportunity in my opinion. So this one was a very fun read, very sweet, and yeah. Next we have The Terrible Head, which is a I don't think it's a myth. I think it's more of a fairy tale kind of based on myths, which I thought was enjoyable for the time that I was reading it. It was clearly heavily based on several Greek myths about Medusa and her head turning people to stone, and I thought that it was a fun enough ride, but I didn't feel like the author had enough of an original spin on it to really make it a memorable story for me. Then we have one that I'm really conflicted about. We have Death of the Day, also by Imogen Markwell-Tweed. I really, really loved the fantasy concept of this. You essentially have a prince who wakes up on Christmas Day and he continues to wake up every night back at the start. So he's reliving Christmas Day over and over again. And it follows him and a mage who has realised there's something wrong with this kingdom and is sort of infiltrating to try and fix the situation. And there were so many things that I really loved about this, the sort of outlaw of magic, or in places where it's allowed, the public perception of magic users and magic itself, and prejudice and prejudice born from fear. And there were so many wonderful conversations. I loved the relationship between the two main characters. I thought it was a lot of fun. I loved the main characters themselves. I thought that they were so vibrant, and yeah, I thought it was just really interesting. However, and I actually read this twice this month in almost quick succession. I listened to the audiobook and I got to the end and I was like, I feel like I missed half the story. I don't know if I'm too tired. I don't know if there's anything sort of fuzzing up my memory of things, but I got to the end of it. I was like, what? So I was like, right, I'm just going to get the Kindle version rather than the audiobook version and try reading it again. And I went through it so much slower this time. And at first I was like, I think I'm just tired. Upon second reread, I do think it's the book and not me. So my problem with this book is that it felt over-edited. It's really hard to explain, but there were certain scenes where it felt like certain explanation sentences were cut out in order to streamline the book, and too many of those were taken out, meaning that things would happen too quickly. And even within sentences, I felt like there were several sentences where there just wasn't enough words in them. I know this sounds very strange, but there were a couple of sentences where I had to read them a couple of times to make sure that I knew who was being talked about and what was being said. And because sometimes the sentence would change subject halfway through, and that I think it was just condensed so much. And also with conversations, I felt like we'd almost jump between key lines in a conversation, and I was like, wait, why is this guy angry now? Why is this happening? And it took me a while to really understand what was going on. So in terms of the plot, I really love this. I normally do really enjoy Imogen's writing style. I've now read several of her short stories. But yeah, it was just over-edited, and I don't know how else to put that. Next we have A Little Light Mischief. Again, I wanted something kind of light and fluffy, and this filled that niche. This is another historical romance. I don't think I went into this one expecting fantasy. I saw the cover and I was like, okay, I've learnt my lesson now. This is going to be pure romance, no fantasy. And I really enjoyed it. It's about these two women who, due to separate circumstances, are quite reliant upon other people for the current circumstances that they are in, and very aware that there are men who kind of control their social circumstances and want to break free of that and want to live their own lives. And they know that building a relationship together is not a good idea for either of them, but they keep on being drawn to each other. And I just thought their relationship was very sweet. I thought that both of these characters had quite an inner strength, and with such a short book, I thought that the backstory of both of these characters was really well fleshed out. And I feel like the overall themes of this were very much like just being good and doing good things doesn't necessarily get you where you need to go in life, because life's not fair. And it was very interesting how these characters played off each other and learnt from each other over time, and I just really loved it. Next I have some more comics, so I'll just go through those pretty quickly because these were all pretty fine reads. I really enjoyed them, but not enough to be favourites of all time. All of them pretty much are gay as far as I remember. So we have The God and the Flightless Messenger, which I really enjoyed. It was about a fantasy setup where gods have magical beings that are assigned to them to look after them, and these magical beings kind of look like angels. So person with wings, and this one boy who was born with really stunted wings and can't fly has always grown up very ostracized by everyone else, and because of that has been a very angry person growing up. But he finally gets the opportunity to serve a god, and he goes off to serve this god, and things happen where all of the gods are in danger, and he feels like he can do things to stop it. And slowly there is kind of a relationship forming between the god and the messenger. And I really enjoyed this. I really enjoyed the concept. However, and I feel like this is fully explained by the fact that this was the author's first foray into fantasy. I could see that. There were certain things where I was like, they could have done better with having a more clear antagonist throughout the story, some sort of reason why lots of these things were happening. It kind of felt like everything came about very conveniently, and I feel like there was a bit of a missed opportunity for the world to expand. So it was an enjoyable story, again bringing in themes of discrimination and how being bullied for something that you can't control can make someone angry at the world, and the strength that it takes to get out of it, and also other people realising the wrong that they've been doing to others in discriminating against them. So fun read, but I don't know, I'm probably not going to continue in the series if it ever continues. Then we have two sort of companion manga. We have Don't Call Me Daddy and Don't Call Me Dirty. So this follows two generations of couples. So Don't Call Me Dirty is about a young boy who's kind of always known he was gay, and his dad is incredibly supportive of him, although he is worried about how the world will treat him. And he essentially starts caring for this homeless man and slowly starts to fall for him, and he can see a lot of parallels between himself and the man that he's helping, in that because he's gay, he gets discriminated against, and he has certain opinions placed upon him, certain assumptions, and he finds that this homeless man is facing a lot of the same issues. And so it's about them slowly coming to trust in each other and about changing the assumptions of the people around them as well. So I did really enjoy that one. And then Don't Call Me Daddy is about the father of the gay son and his childhood best friend, and how when they were younger, the best friend had an unrequited love for the dad, and when he became a single parent, they all moved in together, and he essentially found it too much to bear living with someone he had an unrequited love for, so moved away, and is now kind of returning to the scene and assumes that he's cut off all of his feelings, and he returns into their lives and starts to realize, maybe I haven't, squashed all of these feelings as much as I've told myself I have. So it's about them starting to build back up a friendship after he left all that time, and maybe more. So these two were very good. I thought they had incredibly good messages. The art style isn't my favourite. It's a bit more sketchy than what I tend to prefer, but I did really enjoy these and I highly recommend. Next we have we have 2 more comics and then a couple more 3.5 star novels. So we have BL Fans Love My Brother ? Which is again kind of a gay book, but kind of about siblings. This book follows 2 siblings. One of them never leaves the house, doesn't have a real job, and has sort of really become a shut-in. And his sister finds out that what he's been doing as a shut-in has been publishing comic strips online and comic stories online based on already existing characters. This is called doujinshi in Japan. So he's been publishing these and has got very, very successful. And he's gotten into a pickle because of the fact that he has agreed to go to an event in person and he feels like he can't do that, and he ropes his sister in to pretend to be him because he's been publishing under a female name, because of the fact that the doujinshi that he's been producing have been a lot of gay male romance, and that sphere is often very dominated by women. So he decides to have his sister fill in, and she's like, what the hell is all this? She doesn't know the subculture, she doesn't really understand the appeal, and she agrees to help out her brother once. And over the course of the graphic novel over the course of the manga, she gets more embroiled in this world, she gets introduced to the comics, and they end up both really enjoying this thing together, and it ends up being something that, even though the content of the novels is very sexual, it ends up being a really sweet story about siblings coming together and having a shared interest in something. Nothing sexual happens between the siblings at all. I am, saying that outright now, but I thought this was a very sweet story, if a bit ridiculous, but yeah, you get that with manga. And the last manga I have, at least in the 3.5 star category, I'm not sure if I read any comics that have got above that, is Tomorrow Make Me Yours. This is a contemporary story about 2 boys in a class together, and they slowly start to fall for each other. This one really focuses in on the characters being incredibly different and perceived to be incredibly different by each other. One of them is very outgoing, very extroverted, and one of them is very introverted and incredibly shy, and they think that, so the extroverted character thinks that the introverted character can't be into them because of the fact that they're standoffish, and the introverted character thinks that this guy is just being nice to him because of the fact that he's nice to everybody. But they slowly start to learn more about each other and slowly form a relationship, or quickly form a relationship, as tends to be the case in a lot of these manga. But it was a very sweet story, but nothing to really write home about. I'm not going to be praising this book for years to come, I'm sure, but it was fun. So next we have another Imogen Markwell-Tweed short story. A lot of these came up in my Scribd recommended listens for the month just because I wanted easy reading, and also they were all gay, so I was very happy to read a lot of gay stories. Not quite sure why it was called Peaches and Honey. Yeah, I'm thinking of another book I read the other month. Oh yeah, the other one was called Apricot Jam. I am not mixing that up. Okay, with Peaches and Honey, don't know why it was called that other than those are 2 ingredients that are used in baking. So in this you have 2 men who have both entered in this competition in order to win prizes for their baking. They are both bakers who sell at very sort of small farmers markets. They kind of compete for customers, although not really. And so they also find out that they are next door neighbours, and they have a sort of quite negative first meeting. They make very bad first impressions of each other, and then incredibly quickly start to form a friendship, and then more slowly start to form more of a relationship. This one I really enjoyed certain aspects, and others just I thought weren't done to their fullest capacity. I feel like so one of the characters is divorced, and I feel like him being a divorcee, having spent a while with his ex-wife and her child, he feels very much like the father of that child, and so there's all this discussion about if she's remarrying, does he still have a part in this kid's life, despite the fact that he's not technically blood related. I loved all of that discussion. I loved the discussion about moving to a small town and building up a business for yourself and really working out all of that. I really enjoyed the friendship between the 2. I feel like it went from hate to friendship too fast. This was my same critique of Life After Love by the same author. Hate to friendship went too fast, and then friendship to relationship was really nicely paced, I think, in both of those. And I just thought there were certain aspects of the plot that were just missed opportunities, same as with Boyfriends for Now. In this one, there were certain things about one of the characters that was about his past. So when he used to live in this small town, he had a lot of internalized homophobia. He really took that out on others and was very, very vile to people, and regrets those actions and regrets how he was as a person. And he moved away to the big city, learned more about the world and himself, and moved back to this small town. And I thought that was going to form more of the plot. I thought that maybe he was going to have to confront, say, someone he really hurt. He was going to have to confront his past and confront his previous emotions. And that just never came about. It was just a way to say this was his backstory and that's it. I just feel like it was a really missed opportunity not to have that be meaningful in that context. But yeah, it was still an enjoyable read, just not one that is going to stick in my mind forever.